When I first started playing formal wargaming, obviously it was Napoleonic, so magic wasn't an issue. And then as I began using the Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings figures from miniature figurines, and they have a magic user. They had a wizard who, you, depending on how you painted him, was either Radagast, Gandalf or Saruman. And we based our magic spells on what we could read in The Hobbit and in Lord of the Rings. There was no precedent for using any other magic. It had to be Lord of the Rings. So we looked at Lord of the Rings. Now in The Hobbit, Gandalf makes a big bang, doesn't he, in the goblin caves. So presumably he can do that, and he can do that fairly quickly. He doesn't spend 3 days conjuring up a spell. The goblins appear from the back of the cave. There's a big bang, Gandalf disappears. Several goblins have a nasty experience, and the party's captured. But at the Battle of the Five Armies, Gandalf sits on a hill, as if he's preparing some massive strategy for the end game, when presumably the battle's lost. He's not wading about, throwing spells hither and thither. In Moria, he doesn't defeat the Balrog with magic. He doesn't cast spells. He doesn't say, "Oh, I'll tree bark on myself. I'm gonna put a force field up." Ooh, it's not like that. So magic in Lord of the Rings isn't like magic in Dungeons and Dragons. When Dungeons and Dragons comes along, right from the earliest days, magic starts to become more important. In the early modules, it says things like, you know you've got all these spells, and it's assumed they are tucked in the folds of your cloak, and all the potions and powders that you need are about your person. It never struck me as very realistic, that. I mean, I've done things like combat reenactment as an Anglo-Saxon, not as a wizard. But I know when I'm fighting someone who's trying to beat me to death, I haven't got time to fiddle about. I haven't got time to try and find the right potion, pull one out of my bag and say, "Oh no, it's to read the label. Oh, it's the wrong one. I'm drinking a potion. What was it? Oh, it's an explode into a million pieces potion. Oh, I must have thought it was a health potion. Drat, I knew I should have made them different colours. Things are too quick in a combat. And you got spells in your head. And then you think, well, all right, how are you going to do that? Get the player that's a magic user. Is he physically, mentally, emotionally going to have to learn those spells? Because if he's looking them up in a book, isn't that the same as in the middle of the combat, the magic user takes out a great magical tome and flicks through it for the right page, and then he reads the spell in some arcane language. But somebody's trying to hit him on the head. You haven't got time to do that. Everyone's got magic. Can you imagine in The Hobbit if Bilbo had two magical cantrips? But it's not what I wanted to do. So what I did was I began to think very early, actually, that wizards, magic users, could cast any spell they thought of. You tell me a spell, what do you want to do? And I, as Dungeon Master, would then weigh that up as to how valuable is that in the game. Because I don't want a game where the magic user can solve every problem. If I've spent ages planning a dungeon, I don't want some powerful magic user at the front doing everything, doing the fighting, doing the finding of traps, of secret doors, of diffusing traps, of bringing people back to life. I don't want to do that. Because while that player is doing that, what are all the other players getting to do? And it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum on top of a mystery, wrapped in an enigma. I'm glad I put my best teeth in for this. The trick here, as a dungeon master, is to weigh up the value of the spell against the situation that it's being cast in, and to impose a cost for that spell. So the more ridiculous the spell, the more powerful the spell, the more game spoiling the spell, the more of a penalty it incurs. And in my head, I, as Dungeon Master, can make those spells fail because I'm throwing dice behind my screen and you don't even know what I've thrown. So if you come up with an idea and think, oh, I'll do that, I can say, no, you're not. I wouldn't say that. I'd say, oh, yeah, okay, that's fine, have a go. I want my games to be quick. So we do a thing called the Rye Games, and it's a bit like the Olympics for our fantasy world. The magical one is the one that gives us the most fun, and it's a silly game, but it gets magic users into the habit of casting spells very quickly and responding very quickly. So I'll tell you what it is. You have 2 magic users in an arena and a big crowd. In our world, the crowd is all the other players because they have a part to play in this. So the first magic user says, I'm casting a fireball at you. And instantly, well, within 10 seconds, the wizard who's the fireball's come towards me. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll rebound it. Right, okay. You can't do the same spell twice. I can't just send another fireball. Anyway, there's a big fireball coming towards me. I can't rebound it because that's been done. So what am I going to do? I know, I'll deflect. But now I've spent my spell. So the other guy's still got the advantage. So what's he going to do now? He's going to send a plague of wasps towards me. What am I going to do? I'm still defending, really. I don't know how to counter that. I'm going to turn myself into a whirlwind of electrical sparks to dissipate the wasps. I think that blows the wasps away. And all the crowd go. Now, what's he going to do? He's had his wasps dispersed and I'm a whirling wind. How's he going to deal with that? And so on, until one of the magic users can't think of something to do within 10 seconds, or repeat something, or says something really stupid. Now what that does is it gets the magic users acting quickly. We play a game in taverns, it's called Bouncing Bunnies. Bouncing Bunnies. I'm going to let you in a secret, I'll be Bouncing Bunnies. And Bouncing Bunnies is to make your players, magic users, fighters, whoever it is, act quickly. Because in Bouncing Bunnies, you've got to act quick. So, you're all in the tavern. You've been on an adventure. You've come in, or you start an adventure. You're having a couple of tankards of mead. And somebody's drinking out of a big horn. And somebody starts going like that. Bouncing Bunny. Like a basketball. And after a bit, they pass it. They pass you the Bouncing Bunny. And you've got to do something with it. You can't back it. You might go, block it. Bounce it back to you. So that player gets the bunny. And he's got a few seconds to think. And then he goes, overhead bunnies. And then the other person might just do a simple catch bunny. He might do a rugby pass bunny. And you do it to different players. And that they have to keep, every time they have to come up with some new way of passing the bunny. Until they can't, and then they're out. It's just a way of getting your characters to think and spur of the moment. So that when they're in combat, they're able to pull swords out, fire bows. They're not umming and ahhing about what's the best weapon. And magic's the same. This has led to some disasters. And there have been some good things, and there have been some stupid things. I think it's probably more interesting to tell you the stupid things. And I'm going to go from probably funniest to most serious. Okay, only 3. I'm not doing a lot. Years ago, there was a chap who was a magic user, and he decided, because it was raining in this town, that he would turn himself into an umbrella. I allowed that to happen. He turned himself into an umbrella and fell on the floor. Then he said, oh, I want to turn back. I said, but you are not a talking umbrella. You are just an umbrella. The end of your game, mate. That's it. You're out of it. Lesson learned for everybody else. Think before you start doing this stuff. We're in a big combat went on, with vampires. And the party were really struggling to fight these vampires. It had all started because a character had a cloak of invisibility that they'd found. Because all magic items in my dungeons you have to find. Nobody is given them. And they'd found a cloak of invisibility. So, sneak into the vampire's lair and listen to what they're planning. Good plan. Put my cloak on. I'm all invisible. Am I invisible? Yeah, everyone's had a look. Yep, can't see a thing. Off they go into the barn. Whatever this barn. Low cost, low budget vampires. They've spent all their money on special effects. They're meeting in a barn. Bear with me. It wasn't a barn, but I'll do. So she's listening. Got a plan. Listen to all their plans. And so she takes out a big notebook and a quill through the invisible cloak and starts writing. So a book and a quill appear in midair and start strangely writing. The vampires become somewhat quizzical and it ends up being a fairly difficult fight. So how a magic user decides to save the day, he's gonna make everybody go invisible. Now at the time I thought, yeah, okay, that's great, because they're losing and I don't want that. Everybody goes invisible. Fine. The vampires get bored and go away. The magic user then says, I want to reveal everybody. But I've already penalised them a big score as a subtraction on their intelligence and their wisdom because of the energy that took to make 8 players invisible. So I said, well, okay, but you haven't got the power to make everybody visible at once. You're going to have to do it one at a time. And I'm going to make it hard. Every time I'm going to penalise you because it's a different spell. And if you throw a 1 on D6, it's going to be a fumble. And you're going to take a magical fumble, which is a table of random weirdness, from turning into a piglet to having your ear appear where your nose is and your nose appearing where your ear is. I mean, there's all manner of strangeness. And it gets changed. So he did that, made himself visible. Now he made all of the characters visible bar one. But sadly, the one he didn't make visible, because he didn't have the energy, was badly wounded and bleeding to death. And they couldn't find him, and they had a healing cleric of quite a high level of expertise who couldn't treat this poor beggar because he was underneath the invisibility cloak, and he bled to death. This is the worst one. This one ended an entire Dungeons and Dragons club that had been going on for about 5 years. Now in those days I didn't do the throw a d6, get a 6 to be a magic user. Pretty much anyone could turn up and say, hey, I'm a magic user. That's one reason why I brought in the D6 university idea, to stop this. So it was a huge battle. This is a proper campaign. All the forces of evil have come down, rampaging through the world to confront the final stand of the free people. So the wizard that I'm talking about contacted me and said, can I cast any spell? And I stupidly said, yeah, because that was the rule. Can't change rules mid-game. So we get to the game, got all the figures out. Everyone spent maybe an hour and a half putting all the figures out. Comes to his turn and he said, I'm making all of the forces of good, the free people, invisible. The entire army. We got like 5 people aside, talking maybe 1,000 figures, just vanish. I made the mistake, because it took me by surprise, of not stopping that then. I should have nipped that in the bud then. I should have had him turn into a flock of butterflies, having thrown a fumble and flown away. I didn't. I hesitated. And in that hesitation, the commander of the evil forces just really and rightly said, what's the point? What's the point of this? We're meant to be having a war game. And his entire army's vanished. What am I supposed to do now? Nuts to you. I'm not doing it. And even when the situation had sort of been resolved and calmed, people had lost trust. They'd lost trust in the game, they'd lost trust in me. I cocked up. It's a big responsibility, being a dungeon master, being an umpire of a game. I suppose maybe in some ways that's why I like doing things on my own, because I can't spoil things for so many other people. But perhaps, like all mistakes, and I own up that was a mistake, it leads us to be better and to not make those mistakes. And so I have, and for a long time I've stopped magic. I just said, right, that was so powerful that it fractured magic across the world. The civilized world banned magic, they persecuted magic users. But gradually we've allowed it back. It was too extreme a reaction. That was more than 20 years ago. And the way magic runs now in Dural, with the universities and the D6s to have the power and the finances, is to cap it, to put some lid on it. But I am now, just literally now, this last year, going back to the magic users can cast any spell they can think of, but I then quickly have to decide what level that's at. Is that really a level that they could do? Could that magic user really do that? Does that spell enhance the game? Is it for the good of everybody playing? If I've got a dwarf whose skill is disarming traps, but every trap is disarmed by a spell, what's the point of the dwarf being here? If I've got a fighter, and yet every battle is won by a magic user just destroying enemies, no, I can't allow that. So I have to hit them with penalties. There has to be a big cost, and the bigger the spell, the bigger the cost. And I take that from intelligence and wisdom. And if they get to 0, you are a brain dead cabbage. And if it gets below 9, you can't be a magic user. So it's not just a question of losing all your hit points. You've got to harvest some. You've got to be sensible. You get a few back when you rest, but and eventually you would get back. It's a bit like if you've had a lot of work on and you need to go on holiday. That's fine, you can recharge your batteries. Chances are you're not doing that underground, surrounded by novels, for want of a better example. And there has to be a limit. I have to have some mechanism where within the game, within the feeling of the realism of the game, I can say, sorry mate, that's not worked. And them not go, you've cheated. Because Dungeon Masters shouldn't have to show everyone else what dice they've thrown. They're tough. Because they've got to trust the Dungeon Master. And the Dungeon Master's job is to make the game run along fairly. Whatever that means. Whatever that means to you. I've just been honest here. This is not, look how good my magic is. It ain't. Oh, it's not that. Because I've just told you what shambles it can be. It is just me being honest about disasters I've made, been a Dungeon Master over the years, to the extent that I've actually ruined entire clubs by making one thoughtless, panicked lack of decision. I was trying to find a word to say that. It wasn't a bad decision, it was a no decision. Anyway, I think I've got over it.